Hi, everybody. Welcome to Ask Angela. I'm Angela. I'm here with assistant Laura.
Hey.
And today we're talking short stories. So, in addition to incredibly long novels, I also write very short stories. And so, Laura has gathered some questions about those.
We do. We have several questions. First off, which do you prefer? Do you like writing the short stories or do you prefer the full length novels
I like both. That feels like a very throwaway answer, but it's
better?
very true. You get a different challenge with each of them. So the short stories, one, I like them because they're so fast to finish. My fastest one, which is The Grandmother with Enormous Eyes, I finished in a day, like literally just
Oh,
was
wow.
done. Yeah, so that's great. That's amazing. Compared to a novel that takes like a year, right?
Right.
And so you can get
And
very
gets longer
specific.
and longer and
Yeah,
longer.
I know. You'll level off at some point, right? That's what I keep
Yes.
telling myself. Yeah, but I also love those long novels. I love getting to know characters more and spending a lot of time with them. I love seeing how everything connects, which is why the novels keep getting longer, right? But
And
gosh,
overlap.
yeah, heaven help us all, the overlap. So the short stories never overlap, and that's very deliberate. Where people are like, "Oh, is this in the same world?" And I'm like, "No, you can pretend, but no, it's there's no connection between the short stories."
So
And that's
none of your short stories would
none
fit
of
in
this.
the great.
I say that the I think it's the Puss in Boots and then the woman with the spindle
Yes.
are tentatively in the same world because they're
Oh.
both is that Perot?
Yes.
Um, yeah, they're both the same author, and it there's ogres and the conflict continues, but they're 100 years apart, and
Oh,
it's
right.
very much no,
Right.
we're not. There's no overlap, and it's not. I don't know that you would read it and think yeah, these are set in the same world.
Right.
But in my head, it's kind of the same world. So that's the one small connection in the short stories.
That makes sense. So some authors use these short story opportunities as just creative breaks to get
Mhm.
away. Do you do that as well, or do you do it just because you enjoy writing short stories?
It's a great break. Yeah, it's a great chance to explore a different world, to write something where I don't have to think about the consequences that are going to stretch out from that story. And as I said, it's great to finish something.
Oh
That
yeah,
was honestly the reason I started really writing short stories, is I just wanted to finish something. I forget which
I'm all
novel I was
about the
writing at the
check
time,
marks
but
and
just yeah, we just I start it, it's lovely, and then it's done, and I move
yes.
on, and that is wonderful. So yeah, it's very much a break. It's also a chance to experiment a bit,
All right.
to try some different tones. Or I haven't done anything too out there. I think they all kind of still go together and kind of match my voice, but it's to me it feels experimental because it is just the different world or the different tones. Some of them are a little bit more serious, like The Bruised Princess has this
Mm,
theme of abuse that I'm not sure I would want to spend a whole novel in.
mm.
That would be tricky. Although that is the one last I looked where the most reviews had said I want a full novel of this. So I was actually
Oh,
really surprised that people liked that one. I was really nervous releasing it. Oh gosh, people aren't gonna like it, but they did. So that's a nice experiment, and then you can see, oh yeah, it was okay.
a side question here. It's not one of the three chosen, but you mentioned release. Do you always just put them out as full purchasable ebooks, or do you always start with your newsletter?
Um, I've always started with the newsletter.
Okay.
They've been written very specifically for the newsletter,
Okay.
and then it's just well, I have them, so
Right.
let's put them out into the world and let the people who aren't on the newsletter or who missed it, because
Right.
um, I do not take the time to mention every single one every single time. That would just get overwhelming, I think, for everyone.
Yeah.
So if you came into the newsletter later and missed, 6 short stories or whatever, then you still have a chance to read them.
Makes sense. So you mentioned that two of them were from the same author. So
Mhm.
what else? What inspires you for each short story? What inspires you to write that particular short story?
Yeah, it's very different for each, and it's usually because they're short and specific. It's usually like the inspiration is short and specific, like you can track it and pinpoint it to one specific thing. So, my first one in the Once Upon a Short Story is the grandmother with enormous eyes. And say, do you have it up there? Yeah, it's
Got that
skinny,
one
it's
too. Got
tiny,
it
tiny and
covered.
purple. Yeah. So the first six are bundled. I'm waiting until I get six more so I can make another
All
bundle,
right.
but we're not there yet. But yeah, so the grandmother was inspired by my grandmother. And we mentioned in a previous
All
episode that my
right.
publishing company is named after her. And her house was in walking distance. We would walk there all the time, and it felt, I was like, oh, this is very like Little Red Riding Hood. And she was just so committed to family and just such like the center of our extended family that I wanted to kind of pay tribute to that like devotion of a grandmother to family. And so you see that coming through in this story. And yeah, not all of them. I know we go heavy sometimes. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, wow. But that's good.
And then like Swan Song, for example, and there's author notes that say a lot of these things too. But it was, I used to work at an office that had, you could call it a large pond or a small lake. We'll call it a lake because that's a little more picturesque. Had a lake with like ducks in it. Um, and so I was like walking, between appointments one day, and it was just like stressful. You have those days where, gosh, things just
Oh yeah.
pile on, and you're like, I'm never gonna get caught up. I'm never gonna like. I haven't even eaten today, and then I'm like looking at these ducks, and they're just like eating weeds or whatever, like chewing on mud, and I'm like, oh, that's nice. Like, you just have food
What a
wherever you
life.
are. Yeah, great. I want that life. That sounds good. And so that's the whole point of Swan Song is
Okay.
um recognizing, oh, that kind of spoiled it. I'll try not to spoil it further. Um recognizing that like, hey, it would not be the worst thing in the world to be a swan. Like,
There you go.
I'm kind of okay with it.
Yeah, it's like looking at our dogs, you know. It is definitely a dog's life in this house.
Yeah. Ours as well. Where you're just like,
Exactly.
yeah. And then some of them, let's see. So a gown of spider silk was just kind of silly. Like I was trying to come up with an explanation for kind of a less magical way that you could get like this transformation of a beautiful dress for Cinderella.
Oh, right.
And I was like, spiders. Spiders spin webs, they spin silk, like a spider could do it. And so it's this very like Tim Burton-esque in my mind when I'm picturing it, like
See that.
Cinderella, but with spiders.
Now I want to see that on the screen.
I really like, of all the shorts, like I want to see that one adapted into an animated short.
Yes.
And I think it would
Yes.
just be so fun. So any
Absolutely.
animators out there, like, yeah, contact me. Let's talk. Yeah, so it comes from all over. So whereas in a full novel, I'm gonna piece together multiple points of inspiration. With the short stories, usually it's like this flash, and then we just go.
And then some of them are with your talks with Erica Everest.
Yeah, in the Fairy Tale Courtyard group on Facebook. Yeah, we did a whole series on just looking at these original fairy tales and just talking them out and recognizing that, yeah, they're ridiculous. Here's maybe some explanations. And so, yeah, several of them have come out of that where we'll just talk. And I'm like, yeah, actually, that works. I see that. And then I'll write it down. So the Puss in Boots especially is that way. And that's a longer one. That one took me a few months to finish, even though I had like all my points. Partly just because it's a longer original story, and I was just going through the original like point by point, and then it's first person from the cat, and that was so much fun because he's a cat. He is the best, everyone serves him.
Oh yeah.
And so that was such a fun voice to write, and that's kind of like the spin I brought to it. It's just like this cat, in his boots.
Would you ever go back to any of them to write sequels or anything?
I've thought about it numerous times. I've thought about expanding some of them into novels numerous times because I think there is material there. But I've yet to do it. yeah, they're kind of just nice and complete on their own. And so while one in particular, the dwarf ring, is very open-ended,
Right.
like, and I think there's room for a trilogy at least there. It's also just like this nice complete statement,
Yes.
all short stories in and of themselves. And if I kind of have to destroy that complete statement to
Right.
expand it or to change it. And so I just haven't quite been willing to do that yet.
Plus, there are other stories to be told.
Yeah, yeah, and there are plenty of other things to write. So I always say when people ask me that question, like maybe someday, but not right now.
Yeah. Well, we got some bonus questions out of you this week.
Yeah, yeah, always. Where I give this warning to anyone I do a video with. I'm like, I will just talk, and who knows, and we'll just yeah, you guys. Laura is like so organized and always has a plan, and I'm like, nah, we'll wing it. It'll be great.
And I've got my notes down here. Okay, did I hit all my points?
Yeah, I think we have though, right? I think that
Oh
was
yeah,
the
absolutely. And then
three
some.
questions and some bonus. All right, awesome. So thank you all so much for watching.
Thanks.
Tune in next time. We'll have more questions for you. If you have a question you would like to ask, you can email it to assistant@angelagmarshall.com, and I will also put that in the video description.
Excellent.
So until next time,
Bye.
bye.